Now, the UPA government's flagship program, the Direct Benefit Transfer Scheme, which has run into trouble. The scheme is supposed to transfer cash directly into bank accounts of beneficiaries, replacing the subsidies that often get pilfered. But logistics on the ground are not in place. Last week, the Prime Minister, while chairing a review meeting, admitted that they've run into difficulties. The PM's concerns stem from the fact that the government is moving ahead with 78 more districts in July. These include politically important constituencies like those of Rahul and Sonia Gandhi. I spoke earlier to the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, and on what the problems are and whether the government rushed in without proper planning. Mr. Ahluwalia, thank you for joining us on Left, Right and Centre. It's been 3 months now since the Direct Benefit Transfer Scheme began. How is it going?
I think it's going quite well, actually. The Prime Minister reviewed it only about a week ago. And basically, as you know, we started in 43 districts. The idea of starting in 43 districts was to get the concept tried out, and as you would expect, I mean, some glitches in rolling out the scheme came to the surface. I think those are now being addressed. The scheme is actually operational in the sense that in many of these districts, money is being transferred, but you know, the volume at the moment is small and coverage is not yet universal. However, progress is such that we have decided that in addition to the 43 districts with which we started, another 78 districts are now going to be added. Some of these are going to be in the states where experimenting is already going on, and others are going to be in new states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, Karnataka, where at the moment the scheme has not been initiated. So essentially, we will have something like 120 districts in operation let's say, by the end of 3 months from now. The issue of implementation is very clear that when the lists are digitized, bank accounts are identified for each person, and an Aadhaar number is available, and the bank account is seeded with the Aadhaar number, the system works beautifully. But of course, you know, it's revealed the fact that very often the beneficiary lists themselves are not digitized. Sometimes when you have a digitized list, you don't have a bank account for everybody. And of course, you now have to have Aadhaar numbers for everybody. That is actually what is being worked out. So, you know, it may look as if it's a little complicated, but the actual fact is, as soon as this is done, it will be a seamless operation forever after. Of course, the lists have to be dynamic because, you know, new beneficiaries will come in. But then that becomes a much smaller system challenge. And I think, therefore, on the whole, I would say good progress, but a lot of work to be done.
The Aadhaar enrollment and the way the Aadhaar enrollment is going on, actually your biggest worry at this moment?
No, not at all. I mean, Aadhaar is the, if you might say, Aadhaar is the new kid on the block. I mean, when you get a discrepancy between a list which is available in the central government and a list that is available in the state government, that's not an Aadhaar-related problem. Similarly, when you have a list which has bank accounts indicated, but the banks say that actually they don't have an account for that person, that's not an Aadhaar problem. The Aadhaar problem is simply that we want in future that everybody who is getting this money should also have a unique ID number. See, that's the only thing that will actually enable us to weed out duplicate beneficiaries. The same guy getting the same benefit through 2 or 3 different names. That will not be possible with Aadhaar. The second thing is it will become possible for us to know under how many schemes is the same person receiving different benefits. There may be nothing wrong with that. I mean, in the sense that you're eligible for both. But at the moment, it's not possible to get that. With the Aadhaar number, it will be possible to get that. I think the Aadhaar number will introduce other things. It will make operation of bank accounts much easier. Because even if you have a bank account, at present, you are limited to working with branch banks and, you know, representatives of banks. Once you have an Aadhaar-based system, the system will be what they call interoperable. In other words, I would be able to transfer via a banking correspondent any money from my account in any bank.
Sir,
to the account of the banking correspondent in any other bank and get cash as a result of it. Now, this is where the Aadhaar will. Now, this is independent of the cash benefits, because this is part of financial inclusion.
But
Aadhaar is bringing all these things together.
Would you acknowledge that Aadhaar has run into trouble on the ground? There are reports coming in about that every day, and that in turn has affected the direct benefit transfer scheme.
Well, let me say that no scheme that is presented as a game changer will not run into unanticipated problems. If you look at virtually any scheme of the Government of India and judge what it has achieved in terms of the first few months, you will find that there are rollout problems. Of course, there are rollout problems. I mean, the rollout problems simply are that it takes longer to cover the population than originally you might think. But I do not believe that the problems with Aadhaar, or rather the problems we are facing with integrating Aadhaar with the benefit schemes, I don't think these are in any sense either a disappointment or a signal that we should do something different. But they are a signal that if you want to roll it out as quickly as you want, you need to put more effort into getting this work done. Now, the critical thing here is the way Aadhaar was conceived originally, it was an open-ended system where people would join at their own will, and in due course, probably everybody would join, because there'd be so many benefits. What we are now doing is, because we are making the transfer of benefits linked to Aadhaar, we really need to make sure that everybody on a beneficiary list gets the Aadhaar number. It's not necessary, by the way, to get 100% coverage, but it is necessary to get 100% or at least 95% coverage of the individuals benefiting from a scheme. Now, that should not be difficult. But you know, these are identified beneficiaries. We have the list. So we should basically make sure that they get an Aadhaar number, and I think that's what.
But you know, that is exactly what reinforces.
And I'm sure they'll succeed.
But you know, this is what reinforces the criticism of those who say that the government has rushed into this without proper systems in place earlier, because there is an eye on the elections that are due next year.
Well, you know, the same critics are usually saying that the government is not moving fast enough in many other areas. So quite frankly, I regard this as an understandable but a politically opportunistic criticism. In my view, the government should move a lot faster, not just in Aadhaar, but in everything else we're doing. And I don't think this is connected with the general election. I mean, if we want the country to make progress, and if you want the country to deliver according to its real capability, in my view, government everywhere, central governments, state governments, ought to be working twice as fast as they're doing. Now, what this cash benefits transfer scheme is doing is it's setting a challenge. The committee that monitors it is headed by the Prime Minister himself. It's setting a challenge that let's get this done. Now, if people say this is being done for the elections, personally, let's do a lot of other things for the elections also. That's a completely silly criticism, if you will permit me to say so. We should actually move faster, and I think it's a good thing if we do.
Well, there are not going to be many people who will buy that it's not a political scheme. But I want to digress for a moment and ask you about another important issue. You've tendered an apology to Mamata Banerjee yesterday for what happened outside the Planning Commission. Has she accepted your apology? Is the matter closed with her? Because she was really, really angry with you also.
Well, actually, I was also angry. Let me say, it's not something that happened outside my office. It happened outside the Planning Commission building. It is true that some agitators carrying certain banners collected a whole crowd there. We had warned the police that this was happening. They tried to make sure that she was able to get an entry without being disrupted. It's extremely unfortunate that there was unruly behavior by a mob outside the Planning Commission gates. I did apologize to her because, after all, visits by a Chief Minister to New Delhi, to the Planning Commission for the discussion of an annual plan are an important governmental function, and it's totally absurd for political parties to use that opportunity to interrupt the process. I think she was very graceful. She certainly didn't blame the Planning Commission. She did say that the administration should have handled it better. I think we should have been able to, we have never had, nobody has ever used a Chief Minister's visit to the Planning Commission as an opportunity to have a political protest. So frankly, we'll have to think about how to prevent such a thing from happening. Now, as far as the plan discussions are concerned, we had a very successful meeting, and she expressed to the television that she was quite satisfied with how the meeting went and with the support that the Planning Commission has promised the government of West Bengal in achieving their targets for the current year.
Well, you have in fact been very generous to West Bengal, giving the state a 17% hike in its plan. Many would say that that is the UPA's way of trying to woo Mamata back.
No, I don't respond to every speculative comment made. Let me say, I don't, when you say generous, I don't want to say that we are not generous, but we do not discriminate across states. Every state gets its resources, gets the resources available to it according to well-defined formulae or criteria. And Bengal, of course, has, over the last 2 years, had a special package. Bengal per capita income is low, and many other states also have special packages. Bihar is one example. So I think Bengal has a special package. I think she's done quite well in the last year, according to most of the indicators. And we were very happy to approve the plan. I mean, most of the plan is actually going to be financed from the state's own resources, not really from the resources being given by the center. But the center does have a substantial contribution, not only in the form of direct, what is called normal central assistance, but in the form of many centrally sponsored schemes. But these schemes exist for other states also, so it's not as if we're only giving it to West Bengal.
All right, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, thanks very much. Of course, I don't expect the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission to answer political questions, but there is a lot of politics involved in what's been happening with the Trinamool Congress in the last 24 hours as well.